Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to go through my rod and reel arsenal for 2023. If you've been following the channel, you know that I sold off all my other rods and we actually got a rod sponsor for the channel moving forward. I did get new reels as well. I just figured I'd go ahead and get all new equipment and have a fresh start to the season and kind of line up the way that I would like to have my rod and reel setups. And knowing that I do a lot of tutorial videos, how-to stuff, I wanted to have different rod and reel setups so I could show you some of these ideal setups that I like to use with different techniques. That doesn't mean that you can't use different rods for different things. The company that we went forward with, which you'll notice right here, is Cash and Rods. They make technique specific rods. They're very dialed into certain techniques. You can buy a rod for anything and it's really exciting to see that. But I want to show you that these rods, while they're technique specific, whether you're buying a Cash and Rod or any rod, a lot of these rods can be labeled as technique specific, but they'll work for other techniques as well. So I want to be able to show you that on the channel too. So we're going to run through all the rods that I got here. There's 16 of them. We're going to burn through them pretty quick so this video isn't forever long. I'm going to hit the high points, and like I said, all of these will be featured in future videos. So if there's any of these that you want to see more information on, or the way I fish with them, or different techniques that I use with them, that will all happen throughout the course of the year. I've literally fished with 2 of these rods so far. I did get out this past weekend, but I only used one of them, and I test casted another one, figured out the fish weren't biting on that, and went back to what they were biting on. So I really haven't got a chance to test any of these yet either. So I don't want to give first impressions or anything like that. I'll point out a couple of the cool features on the rods that I've noticed, but other than that, I'm not going to talk about how they fish or anything just yet. You'll get that all in future videos. So first one we're going to start with right here. This is a rod that I feel everyone needs to have in their arsenal, and that's going to be a chatterbait specific setup. Now, like I said, you can use it for other things, but this is like the one specialty rod that I believe everyone should have is a chatterbait rod. And this is a composite rod. I do not like to fish a chatterbait on a regular graphite rod. I like one that has that moderate fast action to it, and that is why I went with this one right here. This is the Icon Chatterbait Rod. As I'm talking through all these, I'll have on the screen pop up the specs, so I don't have to go through all the specs on the rod if you're curious about that. And then this is the Shimano Corrado MGL. I have a bunch of these. I think I got 13 of them. They are in the 7:4 gear ratio. I wanted to have all my reels kind of match, so they felt the same. I had a lot of different reels on my old rods, and when I would jump from reel to reel, they would fish differently, cast differently. I'd have to dial them in. So if I have all my reels matching up, I figured it'd be a lot easier. So I'm not going to touch on the reels as much as we go through because most of them are going to be the Corrado MGLs. So that's what we have here. Going to be an awesome chatterbait rod. Could use it for crankbait fishing as well because of that moderate fast action. Spinner baits even. There's a lot of uses that you could do with this rod right here. The next 2 we have here are going to be my crankbait setups. Everyone has to have some crankbait setups. It's a technique that while you could fish it on a regular rod, having a dedicated crankbait setup is really going to help you out in the long run. Going to keep fish on longer next to the boat. And this was the only rod that I did fish with this weekend. I think I lost 1 fish over the course of the weekend. So got to have a fiberglass or graphite crankbait rod. It doesn't matter what it's made of. It has to have that moderate fast action to it. Again, I'll pop the specs up here, but this is the core crankbait rod. This is the square bill. This is my square bill rod. It's not necessarily for square bills, but that's what I'm going to be using it for. It's just a 7-foot medium heavy rod, and then both of these crankbait setups are going to be ones that don't have the MGL on it. This is the Corrado K. It has the bigger spool, so the 200 size spool over the 150, and it has a 6:2-to-1 gear ratio as opposed to that 7:4 gear ratio. So I like a little slower gear ratio when I'm fishing a crankbait, so I went with the Corrado K on this one, and I like the deeper spool for this rod right here, which is going to be my deep crankbait setup. This is not a true deep crankbait setup. I'm going to be able to do a lot of things with it. It's labeled as the Icon deep crankbait rod, which is what it's made for. I'm going to throw a lot of deep crankbaits with it for sure, and it allows me to get that longer cast with that 200 size spool. That's why I went with that for this setup. But this crankbait rod isn't really a true deep crankbait rod. They have two other models that are higher than this, one for like your 6XDs and baits like that that are really big deep crankbaits, and then they even have one for like 8 and 10XD size crankbaits, those monstrous deep diving crankbaits that really pull hard. I got this one because I can do a lot with it. I could still fish a 6XD on this rod, but I can also go and fish other smaller mid-depth diving crankbaits like a wiggle wart or other baits like that on this setup. I have a very exciting video planned for this setup specifically coming in like the next couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. And then these next two rods right here, while these are also labeled technique specific, I'm gonna do a lot with these, especially not what they're labeled for. So these are both topwater and jerkbait rods. One has the MGL, the other has an SLX DC, the one reel that I did save. I really liked my DC. I really liked Shimano reels. That's why I went with all Shimanos. So I kept that. They're both in the 7 gear ratio. And the only difference between these two rods, they're both the Icon topwater and jerkbait rod. I got one in the 6'9" medium action and one in the 7-foot medium action. And there's two reasons for that. One, I got the 6'9". I really like that shorter rod when fishing around live scope, just because I could keep my rod close to the transducer. And especially for finesse swim baits. So while these are topwater and jerkbait rods, that's really what I got them for, is to fish finesse swim baits for smallmouth. But I will be fishing jerkbaits on them, just like this guy right here. I definitely will be fishing topwater, and that's why I got the two different models. So this one only handles up to like a ½ ounce. This one can handle up to 3/4. You could probably push it upwards of an ounce. So that'll allow me to fish some bigger spooks and walking baits, while this one is going to let me fish smaller poppers or other topwater baits like that. And then I can use a worm and jig rod or something to fish like a big whopper plopper or something like that. So I can cover all my topwater bases with those ones. But that's what I got these two for. Going to be a lot of live scope fishing, jerkbait fishing, finesse swim bait mainly. A lot of that type there. You can even throw a crankbait on these. Like I could throw a small square bill on this rod right here if I wanted to. It allows you to do a lot of stuff. This next bundle of rods right here, this is my bread and butter. This is what you're gonna do a lot of your fishing with on these three rods right here. So there's two Icons. I have an Icon 7.3 medium heavy and an Icon 7-foot medium heavy, and then I have a Core 7-foot medium heavy. These are all worm and jig rods. I got the Core and the Icon so that I could try both price points and be able to speak to those as well. The Icons, I believe, run at around $220, and then the Cores are around like $165. Nowadays, you're basically paying about $150 for a good rod, $100 for a good rod. The nice thing about the Cashin rods is they're all made in America, right in North Carolina. And the other thing, if you know, I always built my own rods for a long time. A lot of the components that are actually on these rods are the same ones that I used to build my own rods with. Some of the guides are the same. The reel seats are the exact same reel seats that I used to use on my old rods. Even these carbon fiber handles, I used to build some of these onto my old rods and they were awesome. So I really like these rods being made here in America with the same components. They're hand built. And the best part is the Icons even come with a lifetime warranty. Price point wise, I wanted to try a little bit of everything so that I can speak to all of them. The last rod that we're going to talk about is actually a very affordable rod made by Cashin, and it's one that I'm really excited to try as well. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But the worm and jig rods, going to allow you to do everything. As you can see, I got a variety of baits on these right now. I have the 6 cent swank, I have a lipless crankbait, I have a finesse jig. I can do pretty much anything with these setups right here. They're all going to have the Corrado MGL 7.4 gear ratio and 14 to 17 pound test. I can throw spinner baits. You guys know it with a medium heavy. You can do literally anything with these rods right here. So this one is actually another pair of rods that I got to test out. They're both flipping models. So this is the Icon flipping series. One, I actually got, this guy right here is the 7'3" heavy. I got that as a jig rod for the most part. Mostly flipping bushes, flipping heavy Texas rigs, flipping jigs. I didn't get to do that on my channel last year, fishing so many tournaments, but that's something I want to show you guys how to do this year. That's what I got this set up for mainly, but you could even do light punching with this, some grass flipping. I can do a lot of stuff with this setup right here. Even though it's labeled as a flipping rod, it's mostly going to be my jig rod. And then the counterpart to this rod right here is the 7.6 heavy. And the interesting part about this one is that it is counterbalanced. So when you pick this rod up without a reel, it feels heavy, especially if you pick it up like up here. It feels super heavy, like a regular flipping stick would be. They're broomsticks, they're very stiff, they're hard to hold, and they keep the tip up all day. This one's counterbalanced in the butt. Once I put this Corrado on here, it honestly feels ridiculously light in the hand when you're holding it right where the reel should be. It honestly wants to keep the tip up, and it seems like it would be much easier to fish with. Again, I'm not gonna speak to how it fishes because I haven't used it yet, but again, I'm gonna use this rod for bush flipping as well. A lot of grass fishing, punching, flipping deep grass, doing a lot of that stuff later in the season. This is gonna be like my Florida bread and butter when I go back down there again. So had to get a big flipping stick knowing that I go to Florida a lot. So those are my two flipping setups. Gonna allow me to do some stuff there. A lot of single hook baits with that. And then this one right here, this is one that I'm excited to have for once as a specialty rod. It's something that I wanna do more of on the channel. And then it's something that I use every year up on Lake Erie. So this is the Swimbait Rod, the Icon Swimbait Rod. It's the 7/8 version. And it's gonna allow me to, one, throw A-rigs. I throw a lot of Alabama rigs, so this is gonna allow me to throw the A-rig all over the place, and it's gonna be perfect for it. It's gonna keep those fish on back to the boat. This one, I also went with the Corrado 200K so that I have the bigger spool for bigger line and the slower gear ratio, because a lot of those swim baits, you wanna fish them very slowly. So the other thing I'm gonna do with this is possibly look at fishing some glide baits, some small Huddlestons, other little swim baits like that, little in like the 6-inch range, and show you guys fishing some big swim baits up here. If that's something you guys would like to see, going out and fishing a big swim bait for a day and just trophy hunting some big bass, let me know down in the comments below. But we got the specialty rod for it and can use it this year if that's something we're looking forward to doing. And then one more specialty rod, you could call it, is the Icon Carolina rig rod. I threw a Carolina rig and caught so many bass on it last year. It was insane. I did a couple videos on it, and I'm sure there will be many more this year. This is a 7'6" heavy. It's going to allow you to throw those big weights and drag that Carolina rig, and the 7'6" gets you a very long cast. But again, this is not something that's going to be just for Carolina rigs because it's labeled as a Carolina rig rod. I can throw a big worm on it. I can throw some big swim baits, like hollow body swim baits down deep, hair jigs. You can do a lot of stuff. This is basically going to be my offshore rod. Once those fish get offshore in the summer, that deep crankbait stick will come out, and this guy will definitely come out and get a lot of use on those offshore bass. And then you guys know I can't live in the Northeast here without having spinning rods, so we kept all our Shimano Sedonas here, have them spooled up with that lime green braid that you guys know I love to fish. And these are all core spinning rods. So I picked the core over the Icon. I might eventually get some Icons because they have the more specialty spinning rods there, but I picked the core over the Icon, one, because I feel like an entry-level rod is a spinning reel. So I wanted to get something that is very affordable for people getting into bass fishing. This rod's only $165, and then this reel is $70, and it's like an ultra quality setup for around 250 bucks. So something that pretty much anybody can get into if they're interested in fishing. And then also, these have the same components versus the Icons that I built my old custom spinning reels with to a degree. I like this reel seat much better, so that's why I went with this one, even though it's a little bit cheaper than the Icon. And then I got 2 7-foot mediums and 1 7-foot medium light. It's going to allow me to do everything. The 7-foot medium, pretty much any finesse technique I could ever throw. And then I got the medium light, mostly for Ned rig fishing. But I can do a lot of different finesse techniques with that as well. And lastly, this is the rod that I was talking about that pretty much anybody could get into. They're $129.99, super affordable rod. Like I said, you can almost expect to pay $100 for a fishing rod now. So this is one that pretty much anybody can get into. And this is the Element series. And I got the frog rod. And the reason I got the frog one, gotta have a frog rod. I love fishing a frog up here. We're gonna get some awesome topwater blowups this year on a frog, hopefully. But more importantly, this also can double as a jig rod if I need an extra jig rod. A swim jig rod down in Florida, I could put some lighter braid on here or leave the heavy braid on and fish it as a swim jig rod. I can do a lot of stuff with this setup right here. So All those setups right there should cover pretty much any technique I could ever run into, and they can be doubled up as other technique rods as well, even though they're technique specific. Like I said, a lot of these rods have a 1, 3, or lifetime warranty. They're all made in America with quality components. If you're interested in getting any of these and supporting the channel, I will link Cashin's website down below. I won't link every one of these rods here today because my description will literally be too long, but as we go through each video in the future, these rods will get linked as I use them, and if you want to get any of them, the exact rods that I'll be using in the video, you'll be able to get them right from the description. So hope you guys enjoyed today's video and seeing the rod and reel arsenal for the year. I'm super excited to be partnered with Cashin and being able to have rods that basically feel like I made them. They feel super quality from what I can tell fishing or holding them so far, fishing with a couple of them, and like I said, as we go through more, I'll be able to give more insight on how I really like these rods. Go ahead and check out this video right here if you want to learn about how to pick out a rod to make sure you're choosing the right one for the technique you're using. Hit that subscribe button down below, and thanks for watching.